Hey everyone, I'm Seth and welcome back to another video. Today we'll be talking about negative rear truck angles and how it will drastically affect your board setup. Let's dive in. Before we tackle specifics of negative angles, it's essential to grasp the fundamental elements that make LDP boards pump effectively. There are three main factors at play: speed, effort, and turning radius. Now here's the thing. These factors are in a constant balancing act. If you want a tight turning radius while maintaining high speed, you'll have to put in a lot of effort. On the flip side, if you aim for a tight turning radius with less effort, you'll lose some speed. And if you prioritize maximum speed with minimum effort, you will need a wider turning radius. In today's video, we are focusing on the turning radius. So how does your turning radius affect your pumping efficiency? When you pump your board, you're moving in an S-curve pattern while going in a straight line to generate speed. While you're gaining speed doing this, you're also traveling a longer distance relative to a straight line. Imagine two shoelaces of the same length, one laid out in a tight S-curve and the other straight. Notice the shoelace in the S-curve covered a shorter distance. Similarly, when your turning radius is tight, your board travels a shorter distance relative to a straight line. This means you need to change directions more often in a tight turning radius. On the other hand, if your turning radius is wider, your S-curve broadens, and the transitions between the curves are smoother, making it easier to maintain speed over larger distances. Now that we understand how turning radius affects your pumping efficiency, the next step is to explore how we can control and adjust that turning radius through the setup of your truck angles. The angle of your rear truck in particular plays a crucial role in determining how tight or wide your board's turning radius will be. This adjustment alters your board's pivot point, and the further back that point is, the wider your turning radius becomes. Let's break it down with some examples. When your trucks are set up symmetrically, the pivot point is centered around the middle of the deck. Decreasing the angle of your rear truck shifts the pivot point closer to the rear truck. If your rear truck is set to 0 degrees, it essentially doesn't turn at all, making the pivot point directly at the rear truck. So as you reduce the rear truck angle, the pivot point moves further back, with a 0 degree angle placing it right at the rear truck. But what happens if your rear truck is already at 0 degrees and you still want a wider turning radius? You have two main options. The first option is to use a longer deck. A longer deck physically shifts the pivot point further back, expanding your turning radius. And the second option is a negative angle rear truck. If extending the deck isn't enough, or you want a more compact setup, this is where negative angles come in. So what is a negative angle rear truck? A negative angle rear truck steers in the same direction as your front truck, effectively pushing the pivot point beyond the physical limits of your setup. The more negative the angle, the further back that pivot point shifts, giving you a wider turning radius without extending your board's length. If you're using an RKP truck, you can calculate your total truck angle with this simple formula. The lower your total RKP angle, the wider your turning radius. Here's an example. If my front truck angle is 58 degrees and my rear truck is 0 degrees, my total angle will be 58 degrees. A setup like this will have a tight turning radius, which makes it more maneuverable, but is less efficient for pumping at higher speeds. If my rear truck angle is negative 35 degrees, while my front truck angle stays at 58 degrees, my total angle will be 23 degrees. This setup would have a wider turning radius, but will be more efficient for pumping at higher speeds. Keep in mind, this formula doesn't factor in deck length. A longer deck shifts the pivot point further back naturally. And when combined with a negative rear truck, you get an even wider turning radius. Here's a recap. Shorter setups with a 0 degree rear truck or a tail offer a tight turning radius but aren't ideal for pumping at higher speeds. If that same setup was longer, it will provide a good balance between turning radius and speed. And finally, you can use negative rear truck angles to widen your turning radius. Adjusting your truck angles can significantly impact your board's performance. Fine-tuning these angles is essential for getting the most out of your setup. However, truck angles are just one piece of the puzzle. Your deck, your trucks and brackets also play critical roles in how your board performs. Additionally, bushings are key in determining how your truck responds to your movements. Everyone has their own preferences, so it's important to experiment and find what feels right for you. Perfecting your setup is about balancing all these factors. I hope this video has helped you better understand how to optimize your LDP board. That's it for this video. If you like the content, please like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Happy skating!